Whatever happened to Jessica Mulroney, the one-time best friend of Meghan Markle, whose children were given prominent roles in the royal wedding, who Jessica herself and her husband sat in the front row at St. George's Chapel right across from the royals, went absolutely kaputs overnight after a stupid social media bust up back in 2020. Apparently, Meghan at the time was looking for any reason to get rid of her friend. And you can't help but wonder why. How did this relationship sour so quickly in the span of just a little over 2 years after Meghan worked very closely with Jessica for a long time? What does this mean? We're going to explore all this today because I find it sort of interesting and revealing. But if you guys haven't been to Royal News Network before, hello, my name is Brittany. I do provide compelling royal commentary, so please hit that subscribe button. I would absolutely love to have you back. And so when it comes to Jessica Mulroney, it is an interesting relationship, you could say, because the two women met in Canada. And at the time of their meeting, Jessica was, you could say, much more famous and influential than her future royal counterpart, because Jessica was the daughter-in-law of one of Canada's former prime ministers. Her and her husband were very influential in the Toronto social scene. And so Meghan really glommed on to Jessica, and the two became fast friends. And it wasn't just that Meghan was friends with Jessica, she was very close with her children. And Meghan's even on the phone on FaceTime with Jessica when Prince Harry proposed. But you probably haven't heard much from Jessica in the last couple of years because Meghan suddenly dropped her like an absolute hot potato. And the reason cannot be more frivolous. Jessica got a little bit in a social media bust up, and it happened at the height of BLM. And the woman she was kind of arguing with in DMs on Instagram was a woman of color. And so for that reason, Meghan Markle, who had apparently been looking for any reason to dump her friend, promptly kicked her out of her life. And the whole situation resulted in Jessica losing a lot. She lost a wedding show she had on Netflix. She lost her spot on GMA. She lost a lot of social media opportunities, sponsors, and affiliates and supporters as well. While Meghan, of course, jumped into the arms of Tyler Perry, Serena Williams, Kerry Washington, basically anybody in Hollywood that would have her. So, what can we glean from this situation? And the first I would have to say is that Jessica was 100%. Not only was she close to Meghan Markle, I think they were insanely close. Again, you just have to look at Jessica's position in St. George's Chapel for Meghan's wedding. Jessica had the primo spot directly across from Prince William. Her children were in the wedding party. Her daughter was like the number one flower girl. Meghan actually gave her bouquet, I believe, to Jessica's daughter. And then the boys, Jessica's sons, held Meghan Markle's wedding veil. And the two proceeded to be pretty close after that. Of course, it was reported that Jessica was helping Meghan with her fashion and styling. Jessica accompanied Meghan, or at least was seen in Australia at the same time as Harry and Meghan during their tour. Then Jessica also apparently flew over with her daughter after Archie was born to meet him. That was just in 2019. And yet, a year away, Meghan dumped her and seemingly has never spoken to her, never spoken about her again. I mean, Jessica, I don't think was even interviewed. Was Jessica even interviewed for the Harry and Meghan documentary? I don't think so. And Jessica would be in the place to know a lot of the beginnings of their relationship because I'm sure anytime Harry was in town, Jessica was invited over with her husband so the two couples could hang out together. And yet, the women don't speak anymore. And this was brought up in a recent Mirror article. It says Meghan Markle's dumped BFF Jessica Mulroney's life now after Duchess's final straw. And the reason, according to reports, that Meghan wanted Jessica out of her life is quite silly, you could say, because of who Meghan herself is and how she has moved through the public media space. As it says here, from girls' holidays in Europe to hanging out at glitzy events and posting gushing tributes to one another on social media. A few years back, it would have seemed unthinkable that Meghan and Jess no longer publicly interact. And this is incredibly true. Again, these women were not casual acquaintances. They were close. This is not, I would say, even one of Meghan Markle's more transactional relationships. This was a close bond. It goes on to say at Meghan's wedding, as we've said, Jess was center stage with her three children, Ivy, Brian, and John, all given positions in the wedding party as flower girls and page boys. This is Jessica, there's Catherine, and there's Ivy, and poor Charlotte's horribly designed bridesmaid's dress, of course. So it just details the demise of their relationship, saying that, however, as 2020 continued with social media distancing restrictions in place in an attempt to curb the COVID-19 pandemic, an incident that saw Jessica accused of problematic behavior is reported to have caused relations between Meghan and Jess to cool significantly. Amid the Black Lives Matter protests, lifestyle blogger Sasha Exter alleged in an 11-minute video that after she had posted a Black Lives Matter call to action post, the two women had gotten into a row over DM and claimed Jess had threatened the blogger's connections with brands and sponsors. Of course, not excusing Jessica's behavior at all. And after the situation, obviously Jessica was called out. She apologized and said at the time, as I told you privately, I've lived a very public and personal experience with my closest friend where race was front and center. It was deeply educational. Was it though? But let's see. After issuing a multitude of public apologies, Jessica's career trajectory was changed overnight. And so was seemingly her once bulletproof friendship with Meghan. Page 6 reported at the time that the scandal gave Meghan the excuse she wanted for some time to cut her best pal off. Source quoted that as saying that Meghan had already felt like Jess was trying to boost her professional opportunities based off her close bond with the Duchess and make a career out of the friendship. The white privilege row has really given Meghan the excuse she was waiting for to cut Jess off for good. I don't know what the tipping point was, but Jess has been on the outs for some time. Another source was quoted by Us Weekly as saying, and Meghan could not get over that Jessica brought up her relationship with Meghan when she was commented about her closest friend in the discourse with Sasha. Now, I mean, really think about that situation. Jessica was attempting to defend her friend on social media. But because of the heightened tensions of the time, Meghan was like, oh, cutting her out. She's using my name. She's justifying herself through me. I just got to cut her out. Got to cut her out. And again, I would argue mostly the situation was a rather stupid social media spat. I mean, the timing that it happened, of course, played a huge role, but this was dumb. And it was not a reason to bust up a friendship. It was not. And that Meghan was really trying to kick Jessica out of her life is a bit surprising. This was a woman whose children played a prominent role in your wedding just 2 years before, helped with Mexit, I think, and then also came over. She came over to watch your kids. Actually, there were reports that Archie was left in the care of Jessica when Harry and Meghan went over in January of 2020 for their little hoorah before announcing Mexit. Jessica was intimately close with the couple, and yet she was unceremoniously kicked out. And the big question you could say is, why does Jess keep her secrets? Why doesn't she go to the media and share her side of Meghan's story? And there's actually a couple of interesting points and perspectives that you could actually take on that. Obviously, some people come to the conclusion that Jessica had to sign an NDA. I'm not really of that opinion. That would be hard to justify in a friendship. I think the answer is actually even a bit more complicated than that. You could say Meghan in some ways might have even paid off Jessica and did so in order to save herself a little bit and prevent Jessica from speaking, because Jessica knows the nitty gritty. Jessica knows some of Meghan's true feelings, I'm sure. And then we also have the possibility that Jessica's maybe hoping for a route back in, because what we have with Jessica and Meghan are two women who I think were always desperate for clout. They were desperate for influence, desperate for power, for prestige. And when the relationship started, Jessica was the power player and Meghan was the little fish. But of course, as time went on, the roles switched. Jessica became kind of the little itty bitty fish in Meghan's gigantic pond. And sadly, as soon as Jessica was no longer useful to Meghan in her new life in Hollywood, the first thing she did was cut her out of her life. I mean, you could probably see this as soon as Meghan was able to convince Harry to go to California instead, Jessica was done. Meghan wanted Hollywood, and Jessica could not give her that. And it's ironic that Meghan kicked Jessica out for, let's say, enjoying the limelight and capitalizing off the friendship, when that's what Meghan's done with the royal family. She's capitalized off the relationship to make money. People only buy her crappy products because of her name as the Duchess of Sussex. That's the only reason. Her products are crap. I'm sorry. I've had most of them. I've tried them. They're crappy. They're not very good. They only move. People only buy it because of who she is, and that's it. That's it. There's no other reason why people buy her slop. And for her to cut out Jessica for the same reason, I mean, it reflects of who the two women are, because one of the, you could say, negative stories about both the women and Jessica's daughter Ivy is that when Charlotte's bridesmaid's dress came back and it was too big, there has always been rumors, and I'll say this is rumors, not actually confirmed by any ways, but we know the bridesmaid's dress was too big according to Harry's book. That's what he claims. And Catherine was obviously very upset about that, and so was Charlotte. And it's been rumored and speculated that part of the bridesmaids bust up was Jessica and Meghan, and I'm sure goading Ivy into it too, making fun of Charlotte. And allegedly, again, thought this has been what I've heard in various corners of the internet or wherever, that the word fat might have come up, even though she's a little girl and the dress was just simply too, like, obscenely large. And we see the horrific construction of the dress on the actual wedding day. And so Jessica, of course, is not remotely, I think, sinless in that scenario, if that's what happened. And I could see her going on with Meghan and having a bit of that mean girl streak. But again, that Meghan was so quick to cut her out over the tiniest of tiniest of things should give Prince Harry himself severe pause and concern. Because if Meghan is willing to cut Jessica out of her life, even though the two were previously insanely close, what does that mean for Harry himself? Because the reality remains is that I think Meghan, and this has been speculated recently as well, married Harry not for love, not for him, but for his title, his money, and what money she can make through him by using his title. It had nothing to do, or very little to do, with actually him. It was just that he was an easily manipulated bloke and he went on with whatever she told him. And I think she absolutely loved and adored that. And that's her connection to him. Now, obviously, they have children and that changes the dynamic, but you got to think Meghan was like the godmother to Ivy. I mean, she spent a lot of time with Ivy on her social media page previously before marrying Harry. She was pictured a lot hanging out with the kids. And Meghan, of course, not only did she cut Jessica out of her life, she cut the kids out too. Does Harry honestly think that won't happen to him just because they have kids? No. I think Meghan is more than willing to cut anybody out of her life who does not matter to her. And I mean, of course, this was the writing on the wall when it came to Meghan's father as well. I mean, how Harry could not take a little bit of pause thinking, why doesn't Meghan want me to meet her dad? Why can't her dad come to the wedding? Why? But Harry didn't think to ask at all. He just went along with everything. And I think the result is absolute chaos, absolute a collapse of varying relationships. And if Harry thinks that he is immune to Meghan Markle and her habit of markeling people, he is sorely mistaken. If it can happen to them, it can happen to him. I would not be surprised if that is a future that holds for him, is at some point, Meghan will be just looking for the excuse. Just like with Jessica, once Harry, and I mean, again, I know their relationship is much more complicated and intimate, but once he's no longer useful, I would not be surprised if she cuts him out at some point. She moves on. It's not worth it to stick around with the two of them anymore. It's better to move on. And it's better for Meghan and her future prospects to move on. She'll find somebody better. She'll find somebody with more money, because I don't think any of the stuff she's doing is making a whole lot of pennies at this point, especially because she has to share the profits with, I think, a lot of different disparate groups, including Netflix, which has probably financed most of her company at this point. So things aren't looking too hot for Harry, but he should have seen the writing on the wall and seen how Meghan treated her closest friend, because even though he might be her husband, he definitely could be next. So, guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think, and I shall speak to you again very soon. Bye.